How's it going, everybody? Sean Ross here. So I just got done watching episode 38 for the English dub of Dragon Ball Super, and honestly for me, this episode is kind of a mixed bag. I have positives and mainly one negative for this episode. The positives, I love the display of Hit, his character, and his powers and technique in this episode, and I loved how the first half of this episode mainly pertained to Vegeta going up against Hit, and then after the commercial break, the second half of this episode being Goku going up against Hit. But my negative for this episode has to go to the animation, and I have to point it out because it was very noticeable in this episode. So far for the Universe 6 arc, the animation for the last couple episodes actually has been very, very good, or at least better than it has been for the previous two arcs. But this episode was definitely a downgrade. Definitely during the Vegeta against Hit section, it was very, very noticeable. And I was kind of laughing to myself during that section because in my mind, I was basically thinking, Hit is so OP and is hitting Vegeta so hard that he's knocking Vegeta off of his animation model. Like, there are some shots during that section where Vegeta doesn't even look like Vegeta. Like, his arms don't look like they're drawn correctly. He just looks like a third grader went in and animated, Vegeta in that section. It wasn't that bad, but it was very noticeable, like, especially comparing it to the last couple episodes we have been having. But that really is my only negative, and I just want to spotlight that little section in my review. But now I just want to dive into what I really loved about this episode, and that was getting to see Hit on full display in this episode. So let's go back at the very beginning because we have Vegeta going up against Hit, and I love how right off the bat we come to learn the nickname that Hit has in Universe 6 for being the assassin that never misses, and his nickname is Never Miss Hit. I love that nickname, and it really is on full display in this section when he's going up against Vegeta because he does not really miss one hit on Vegeta the entire time. And even though it's, Vegeta's going up against Hit, he immediately goes into Super Saiyan Blue, but in his position, many people would be wondering, it's like, why doesn't he conserve his energy like Goku was when Goku, in the second half of the episode, was going up against Hit in his base form? But in Vegeta's standpoint, he's going up against the last person of Universe 6. He wants to go all out, he wants to end this as quickly as possible, but unfortunately, for Vegeta, he's going up against an opponent he basically knows nothing about, and Hit's technique catches him off guard, and Super Saiyan Blue, Vegeta can't do anything to get around Hit's time skip technique. So I love this entire section, even though the animation is very, very wonky, but just getting to see Hit, in the blink of an eye, landing these blows on Vegeta was very cool to see. And you don't really get to see Vegeta so far within this tournament taking blows like the way Hit is delivering them to Vegeta. But of course, Vegeta ends up, getting like a little bit of a heads up on Hit when he ends up, taking a blow to the ribs from Hit and grabbing his arm, kind of getting an advantage and going in for a quick strike, but that just gives Hit the opportunity to deliver another very quick time skip related blow and then just knocks out Vegeta like that. And I was actually amazed too because I did not think that Vegeta would be taken out in the first half of this episode. So that just goes to show how powerful Hit is and how strong the time skip technique is. And after we come back to the second half of the episode, that's where we actually get the name drop of the time skip technique because both Jocko and I believe it's the king of Universe 7, the squid tentacle-like creature who has the crown on his head, they end up basically telling, Goku and Jocko about the time skip technique and about how Hit is able to basically freeze time and actually jump ahead 1/10 of a second. And combining that with his insane speed allows him to actually have these perfect strikes, on the precise location that he wants to hit his opponent on. That is a deadly combination. And I love also too, as Goku is like on the sidelines and he realizes he's going to be the next person to go up against Hit. He's trying to get as much information as possible because even though Goku is not the smartest character, when it comes to fighting, he is technically a genius. So I love the fact too that it was really showing Goku trying to come up with a strategy as he's watching, Hit go up against Vegeta, because unlike Vegeta, Vegeta is going into this fight blind, but now Goku in the second half of this episode actually has, a little bit of a strategy built in going into his fight with Hit, which now allows him, to actually figure out a way to, get out of the funk of the time skip, to get out of that and hopefully land a few blows on Hit. So we go into the second half of of this episode, and I feel like the second half of the episode is very, very straightforward. We have dialogue going back and forth between Goku and Hit, because Goku right now is trying to stall for time, trying to still figure out a strategy around Hit's time skip technique, and I really love the shots of Goku dashing around, trying to find an opening, from Hits that way he can, bypass the time skip technique. But it's the dialogue beforehand that I do find very, very interesting, because we have Hit looking at Goku basically saying he looks very young to be a fighter, in this tournament. But then Goku retorts basically saying, I'll have you know, I'm a grandfather back in my universe. And then Hit retorts from that, basically telling him, it's like, I'm 1,000 years old. And this kind of had me thinking, well, if Hit has been around for 1,000 years, how many of those years has he been an assassin, in Universe 6? How many years has he had to hone his skills with, experience, time, and just developing his time skip technique? So he has, the experience over Goku, but like I stated, Goku is a technical genius and an excellent fighter. He knows when it comes to fighting, he always figures out a way, because he may not be smart outside of fighting, but when it comes to fighting, he is basically a grade A fighter. And in this fight, he actually ends up finding a way around Hit's time skip technique. He ends up blocking actually a few punches from Hit, and then ends up grazing him as he actually is able to almost land a punch on Hit's cheek, which probably hasn't happened to Hit in quite some time. So basically during this section, Goku, I assume, is basically guessing where Hit is going to, throw a punch or kick at Goku. So he's trying to predict where Hit is actually going to land his punch when he, goes through his time skip technique. And that is basically the gist of the second half of this episode. And it felt very weird how this episode kind of ended, because I felt like it ended very abruptly. But what I'm really looking forward to is episode 39, because this is going to be a great episode to watch, and I am so looking forward for the English dub to finally get to this episode, because the ending of this next episode is going to be very, very enjoyable. I cannot wait for that. But other things that happened in this episode that I thought was actually very, very funny was at the very beginning with Monaka. He actually knocked out of his comatose state. He's like, wait, where am I? And then as soon as Vegeta went Super Saiyan Blue, it knocked him back unconscious once again. And then, of course, I have to point out the sass of Whis, because it is once again displayed very well in this episode when Whis is talking with Beerus, and he's just giving him the sass like, well, it's your fault we have Monaka on our team. We could always send out the most powerful person of Universe 7, Monaka. And you can just tell by Beerus's face, he's like, how dare you mock me? And I just love how Whis is enjoying himself, the laughing and the sass. But in that little section, Piccolo overheard that entire conversation. So right now, Piccolo knows that Monaka is not who Beerus told them he was meant to be. So that is very interesting right there. But that is basically everything that went down in this episode. Like I stated, episode 39 is the episode to watch out for, and I am so looking forward to the English dub adaptation next week. Oh my god, it's gonna be so good. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this episode. What did you think of the first half of this episode with Vegeta going up against Hit? And what did you think about the second half of this episode with Goku going up against Hit? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'm definitely looking forward to episode 39. So until episode 39 for the English dub of Dragon Ball Super, I'll talk to you guys then. See you later, guys.